Good morning. Thank you very much to the organizers for this invitation today. For me, it's a pleasure to be here in front of you. So my name is Susana Val. I'm the director of ZLC. It's a pleasure. I insist being here. I love Edinburgh. It doesn't matter if it rains or not. For me, it's fantastic staying here today. So I would like to introduce, I would like to briefly introduce the center where I'm working. That was a very good explanation provided by Paco today, but let me explain why we are located in Zaragoza. It's in the middle of nowhere. Well, it's in the middle, in the way between Madrid and Barcelona, exactly in the middle, 300 kilometers far from the most important cities in Spain and also south of France. It's where the biggest GDP is 22 million people live in the northeast part of Spain, and the biggest GDP in Spain as well. Why we are here? Because between 15 and 20 years ago, the government of our region, the Aragonese government, decided to invest in logistics. Why? Because the outsourcing of activities to Eastern countries and to Asian countries, and because there were not a lot of industry. We were typically a region supported by the GM, the General Motors, the automotive sector, and well, they forecast a crisis, a future crisis in the next decade. It was true. And they decided to invest in logistics services. They decided to invest. They built the biggest logistics park at European level. It's more than 1,000 hectares. We had nothing on this area. It was desert. They decided also to create a talent hub for supply chain, which is ZLC. So they started contacting the biggest manager of the Center for Transportation and Logistics at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and then they decided to create the first center outside the US in Zaragoza. So we are a partner, we are an affiliate center of the MIT, located here in Zaragoza, the first center created in 2004. So our mission is to create an international center of excellence in both research and education in logistics and supply chain management. And our main goal is to actively engage with industry, just to disseminate our knowledge to the public sector and to the industry as well, of course. So right now, this is our picture. So now we have 6 centers on what we call the MIT Global Scale Network. So we have now 1 center in Bogota in Colombia, then we have a center in Malaysia, we have another center in Ningbo, China, and the last center being created in Luxembourg. All of them are different. We are the center that has the biggest consolidation, as we were created 15 years ago. And what does it mean? It doesn't mean only that we are running different educational programs, or we have a lot of academic partners, researchers, and corporate partners. It doesn't mean only that. It means that we are up to the newest trends in logistics and supply chain management. And we exchange professors, we attend international conferences, so we are up to the new trends in logistics. So just a few numbers, a few figures of our activity. Regarding our educational programs, as we are running international masters, with the MIT Scale Masters in Supply Chain in USA, Spain, and Malaysia were ranked #1 by EdUniversal. We were also ranked, ZLC was ranked as #4 in the Supply Chain Management World's Top 100 Universities. And the MIT Zaragoza Master was ranked #1 for 7 consecutive years, from 2011 till 2017 by El Mundo, which is one of the national newspapers in Spain. And this is the area of research. These are the topics related to research in our center. These are the current topics related to research, and these are not the topics for tomorrow. It means that we continuously change our trends in research depending on the demand of our customers. Which are our customers? Our customers are our students, which are demanding new trends or topics in logistics, such as digitalization, big data, Internet of Things, that were not demanded in the past. And our customers are also the companies. And we work in European projects, and we are willing to influence the different calls that the European Commission is launching, as we actively participate in the technological logistics platform at European level, which is called ALICE, and we were also the founders of such a platform. So we are able to influence on how the European Commission just to launch topics related to new trends in logistics that we have identified or we have detected from our customers. So it means that these are the topics of today, but doesn't have to be the topics of tomorrow, okay? And some key figures related to research. We are the entity #1 in Spain in number of European research projects on logistics and supply chain management, which is great. And within these years, we have developed more than 100 research and development projects, collaborative projects, so that has been done in consortium. We have more than 25 European Union-funded projects, which has led to more than 350 partners in research projects, more than 100 referred publications, and we have participated with more than 10 faculty researchers coming from different countries. So how to start? Because we are talking about smart cities, but I just wanted to illustrate this with one of the current projects, one of the ongoing projects that we are running from ZLC. So this is called Mobility for You, Mobility for European Union. So this project started on 2016, January 2016, expected to finish by December this year. And this project aims to have a vision of the transport trends by 2030, and also to develop an action plan on how to implement those trends, okay? So basically the project is asking about which are the features for 2030, which are the political, economical, and societal needs by 2030, and which are the uncertainty that we have while dealing with those changes and those trends, and which are the technology that is facing this acting as enable, or that enables those changes just to create those trends. So all of these questions are expected to be answered with this project. And this is the map that originally was created. So we have several meetings with experts related to logistics and supply chain management. And you cannot see maybe from your place, but let me explain a little bit this framework of work. So here in the lowest part, we have the trends that were identified by the group of experts. So those trends include trends related to society, accessibility, digitalization, safety and security, distribution of wealth, novel business, environmental protection, and legislative framework. And of course, urbanization and smart cities, which is where I'm going to focus today. And of course, just to focus, just to achieve this trend, we have some technology enablers. So here you have a list of technologies that may help to achieve this trend. And also here you have key features. So what is needed by the stakeholders, what is needed by the economic, what is needed from economic and political environment. And here in gray, you have a lot of uncertainties. So for instance, what we want is a better accessibility. You want some greener areas in the city. You want some integration of ticketing. You want some carbon footprint reduction, but you have some uncertainties that are linked to those changes and to those trends. So uncertainties comes from cultural changes. It comes from automation versus labor. It comes from regulations, lack of regulation, for instance. It comes from global climate, global change, warming change, etc., etc. So, following methodology called MANCA, the multi-actor, multi-criteria analysis, then we join altogether a group of transport and network managers, representatives from the public and freight sector, also policymakers, IT developers, etc., all together just to develop 4 main scenarios. Those 4 main scenarios were based on 2 main factors. First one, lifestyles, different lifestyles of the people, and also policy and legal framework. So at the end, we were facing those 4 scenarios. So on the right-hand side, those supportive of innovation and interoperability. Here on the left, unsupportive, more protectionist, fragmented. At the top, those that were based on globalization, consumption, and at the bottom, those related to responsible consumption, cooperation, local ideas, etc. So let me briefly explain those 4 scenarios. So the first one was called data world. In this scenario, data world, it's expected that there's no strict regulation, there's no support from the European government, and there is a fast-paced transformation. It's expected in this scenario that big companies are owning their data, they are managing their own data, but they are not sharing data, and they are not collaborating or cooperating with the government, with the public administration. This other scenario, digital nomads, is a fast-paced transformation. There is an integration of mobility services. There is a lot of flexibility. Governments are supporting innovation. Everything is strictly regulated. In Slow is Beautiful, we're coming back to the social values. So innovation is not supported. Transport is non-regulated at all. There's no support of any global activity. So we're coming back to the, as I mentioned, to the global values, to the local neighborhoods with no support from governments. The last one is the minimum carbon. So they are encouraging reduction of carbon footprint, innovation of ideas. They are supportive, they are regulated, there's standardization, and everything is strictly regulated, and transport systems are integrated, focus on decarbonization of the system. So from those 4 scenarios, those that are mostly reflecting what is the concept of smart cities are minimum carbon and digital nomads. And what a smart city is. So yesterday we saw a definition of what a smart city was. Asking the European Parliament, and according to the European Parliament, a smart city must possess at least one of the following characteristics. So let's say governance, economy, environment, people living, and mobility. And this is where we are. But when we are talking about smart mobility, we're not talking only about persons, we're not talking about citizens, we're talking about goods. We're talking about integration between passengers and freight delivery and the supply chains. And this is really important, because most part of the cities are forgetting this important part, which is integration. And why is this important? So nowadays, is integration of smart mobility is, just let me define that. Smart city is an ICT-supported and integrated transport and logistics system. So for instance, if we are willing to integrate metro, bus, tram, cycling, pedestrians, citizens, etc., if we're able to integrate this information with those devices that Juan Ramon was talking yesterday, if we're able to provide on real-time information from those devices, it's going to be perfect. It's going to be a perfect ecosystem just to provide real-time information to choose the optimal mode of transport. But it's going to be also valuable information for the logistics operators, as if they get real-time information about the deliveries, they can better plan for the medium and the long term. So that's incredibly important, what we can achieve just sharing the information from every single transport mode and integrating goods with transport, with goods with people, sorry. But according to this woman, which is called Alicia Sin, she's the founder, the co-founder and the CEO of a company settled in Zaragoza, in Spain. It's a company called Libelium, and they manufacture sensors, and they have been internationally recognized and awarded at international level as well. Smart cities is not only a kit of technologies. So we're not telling that smart cities is, I'm taking just 7 different technologies, I integrate that this is a smart city. No, it's not a set of technologies. Smart cities is an emerging capability just to innovate, just to create solutions according to the city needs. And that's very important to distinguish, that this is not several technologies working together. It's a set of, it's a capability to innovate, to create local solutions, and to also take into account cities' needs. And this is what happened in my city. I want to illustrate that with my city. There's 700,000 people living in Zaragoza, in Spain. You cannot start building a smart city because you need to know the state of the art of the city. So you cannot start just implementing or deploying different technologies if you don't know what's the current state, if you don't know what the citizens think, if you don't know what the logistics operators in the city think, if you don't know what the policymakers consider about the city. So this happened a few years ago. Now Zaragoza has a department of smart cities. They are quite concerned about smart cities. But in the past, what happened is that the city experienced several changes. So we started running the tram. There were more and more pedestrian areas. It was promoted the use of cycles, of bikes. There were some kind of actions just to modernize the city. However, regulations remain the same. However, the logistics operators, when doing the last mile delivery, they were facing a lot of problems and complaints because they used to have several routes for the delivery, and now it was forbidden because there was a pedestrian area. So it was taking longer times, they were taking higher cost in their deliveries. So they complained. Public administration realized that they had a lot of complaints also for the commercial sector. Then we joined all together under the umbrella of the cluster of logistics that was created in the region, and then we start discussing. And that was the first approach to the concept of smart cities. Here are some pictures. That was part of the study that we performed. So it's nice to see that citizens have a place just to walk, but this is a narrow street, only for buses, no way for the cargo, the last mile delivery in this area. Or here, we saw a lot of illegalities in the road, and some pedestrian areas that were completely full of boxes just for the last mile delivery. So we sat together trying to integrate the public administration together with the logistics operators and also some other stakeholders of relevance to the city. So the main goal, well, this is a summary of the project, but that was there were a great difficulty in integrating both public administration and the logistics operators. The city was intended to build a sustainable urban mobility plan, but they have completely forgotten the part related to freight. And it's a mistake, because time ago when I was working for the Civitas project at the European Commission, I had the opportunity to see the guidelines for the sustainable urban mobility plans. And then we realized that none of the cities that appear on this document as successful cities that had already implemented the SUMP, none of them had taken into account the component of the freight in their mobility plans. That was a mistake also from my city. Also, the different points of vision. But at the end, we had a common goal that was to analyze what was the state of the art, just to start building in the direction of a smart city. And also, we have like 3 different goals that were converging at the same time. Was one, the economic one, reducing operating costs while doing the last mile delivery. The second one was environmental. Of course, cities are quite concerned about reducing carbon footprint. It's one of the directives of the European Commission. There's a directive by 2030 and also by 2050, in which there should be a shift from road to other transport modes. And also we have a social component, which was reducing number of accidents, improving lifestyle of citizens. But it implies also a mental shift by the stakeholders in the city. It wasn't easy. So we identified that, of course, there were different legislation is obsolete, most part of the cases. Legislation is obsolete. It's also a big problem for the logistics operators, as they are new, they are innovating, like new ways of conducting or doing the last mile delivery in their supply chains. So nightly deliveries, for instance. There are many innovations, but they are not still regulated. Not in our region. It's something general or generic at the national level and also at the international level. So different perception in the pipeline. So upstream, we had when talking to the managers, we had a different perception of what it was happening at the street level than for the truck drivers, for instance. That was a different perception upstream or downstream. That was also something to be taken into account. And we identified, among others, some challenges as, for instance, we need to urgently modify the legislation and the regulation. Also establishing control mechanisms. So that when translated to smart cities, of course, has to be built on the same way. So you need to establish monitoring, you need to establish control mechanisms just to avoid or just to guarantee the quality of the process. So here are some European examples. Some of them were very similar to what it was mentioned last night. So this belongs to the Stride Solve project that happened in the UK. These are containers from textile donations, and those containers, they have a sensor that detects when the container is full. So the idea was taking advantage of this sensor to optimally establish the collection of those bins. Because of the reduced time windows of the fleet that was collecting the containers, they could only observe like a 3% of savings, but estimations of the project said that with a wider time windows for collecting those bins, those containers, savings could raise till 25%, which is a lot. Another project is called Grow Smarter. So they had 3 pilots in different cities in Europe. One was Stockholm, Cologne, and also Barcelona. So this is a cargo bike, electric cargo bike. You may have seen that. I've seen a lot in Spain, just for delivering to supermarkets, etc. In this case, this cargo bike, which is up to, I guess, 180 kilos of cargo here, they had a sensor located here at the top of the bike. This was acting, the pilot in this case, the cargo bike was acting as a neutral stakeholder, like a trustee, so that the transport operator could arrive to the transshipment point, and then the cargo bike was doing the last mile delivery, and they were reporting information related to environmental information, basically. And it was doing the last mile till the consignee, of course. Some results coming from the Grow Smarter project addresses that the number of heavy vehicles per kilometer shifting to renewable fuels had been of 23,000 kilometers, and there were savings of CO2, around 6,000 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. Other example related to the port of Hamburg in Germany. So the port of Hamburg is position number 2. It's the second busiest container port in Europe. It's one of the most important connecting points between Eastern countries, Germany, and also the rest of the world. So they created a project 5 years ago just to transforming or shifting the port into a smart port logistics, which is the name also of the project. So they basically created a system of communication among all their stakeholders based on the cloud. Also, they built an intelligent parking space control system for the trucks and also all the vehicles that were on the area to optimally allocate the space, the available space. They fully integrated a traffic management system among all the all the traffic that was running in and out the port. And they also were reporting, they installed a set of sensors just to control emissions. They were reporting not only emissions related to environment, also noise, humidity, and they were reporting all of that in order to reduce the carbon footprint. And finally, they wanted to monitor port infrastructures. So they installed also street lights that you mentioned in Santander yesterday, that you were installing street lights. And well, they transformed completely the port of Hamburg. And of course, couldn't finish the presentation without talking about physical internet. So all of these measures taken to the extreme is what we call physical internet. So physical internet is a reality right now. So it's something in which we are involved and we have to accept. Why is that? Because there are a lot of inefficiencies in our logistics systems, in our supply chains. So for instance, if you realize the load factor of the trucks from the origin to destination, so they have an average of 50% of the cargo. So it's quite strange finding a full load truck going from our origin to a destination. So physical internet can lead to an optimal use of the load factor of the trucks. Another example is when storage facilities, for instance, they are not optimally allocated, or multimodal transport. So we still don't use, we are in the 21st century, we still don't use optimal intermodal transport or multimodal transport. So we are intended to achieve the concept of synchromodality, which is allocated the best transport mode on real time. But who knows what's the best transport mode and who owns the information on real time? So that's really difficult, and it can be achieved thanks to physical internet. So everything taken to the extreme is what we call physical internet. Same for Internet of Things. We're talking about Industry 4.0. Translated into our field, we're talking about Logistics 4.0. And it's becoming more and more important in our lives as researchers in logistics. As, for instance, we are participating right now in projects related to food supply chains. So, or this changed completely the perception that we had at the very beginning, when from the production from the orchard to the final consumer, that we were feeling a straight line, and now everything is feeding all the actors that are at the intermediary, that act as intermediary on the supply chain. So we are completely sure that is the future of the logistics and supply chain. Let's see, this is Mr. Montrell from Georgia Tech University. He was one of the founders, let's say, of the concept of physical internet. And he explains that everything is going to be easier if we pass from the traditional and conventional picture to a hyper-connected logistics infrastructure. We work, for instance, on a project in which we are working on is called Clusters 2.0. It's a European project, and it's not talking about how to become more efficient on a logistics park. It's how to become more efficient establishing synergies between different clusters of logistics clusters. So it means that all the clusters around Europe should be hyper-connected. We should establish synergies so that we could allocate better our resources. An example of this is provided by Mr. Montreuil in France. This is the example of a project together between Carrefour and Casino. So they interview the top 100 suppliers of both companies. They arrived to a conclusion. So this was the oldest map with the flows a few years ago. And you can see here all the flows from the origin to the destination. So as you can see, there's no, everything is yellow here. So what happens if they hyperconnect the flows? Okay, if there are many coincidences between origin and destinations of the different logistics operators and the different supply chains. So what happens when you go from this picture to this picture is that you find a lot of coincidence. And at the end, if you combine road and railway, then you find that you have this picture, which is a better an optimization of what it was originally. So economically, with this study, they raised till 32%. They saved 32% of all the cost of the company. And they reduced greenhouse gases emissions by 60%. And they also shifted 50% of the flows shifted from road to rail. And finally, I would like to mention that, of course, smart cities impact on the workload. So what's going to happen in the future? So we are talking about automation versus the labor. So all the tasks are becoming less manual than it was that they were in the in the 90s or at the beginning of the 2000 year. So the workers also need to change their routines. They have now to interpret a lot of data. They have now to engage with software planning tools that they didn't have to in the past. And we are creating new jobs in the field of data and information infrastructure. We need talent gap of qualified workers. So for all of this, we need training. Someone asked yesterday about if teachers were going to disappear. I don't think so. So we need to train people, but we need to train people in focus areas. So the way in which we train people in the past has completely changed. So now we are in front of emerging technologies, etc. So teachers are a fundamental key just to achieve this. And just want to mention that a couple of months ago I was on a roundtable and someone said that the new jobs, he said that around 30% of the new jobs on the new generation wasn't yet created. And that's true, because technology is moving too fast. And a lot of companies are not reacting at the same speed. So we need to be proactive. We need a lot of training, education, and we need to be willing to move fast as well. And just last slide. I would like to illustrate this with a sentence from Steve Jobs, in which he insisted in that technology was nothing. So what is important is that you have a faith in people, that they are basically good and smart, and if you give them tools, they'll do wonderful things with them. and I think that's true. Thank you very much.